She thought she controlled the game, but now the rules are mine.
You know what they say about no good deed going unpunished? Well, whoever said that clearly never met my wife's family. Because when I handed over the keys to that $500,000 beachfront mansion to my daughter Ava, I thought I was being generous. Turns out I was painting a target on both our backs. My name is Nick Carter, and I'm an architect. I build dreams for a living, custom homes for people with more money than sense, mostly. The irony isn't lost on me that I spent 20 years creating perfect spaces for other families while my own was rotting from the inside out. The mansion I gave Ava sits on 3 acres of prime Miami Beach real estate. Floor-to-ceiling windows, infinity pool, the works. I designed it myself 5 years ago for a tech mogul who went bankrupt before construction finished. Rather than let it sit empty, I figured my 23-year-old daughter deserved something beautiful as she started her new life with her fiancé, Mark. Now, Dad, are you sure about this? Ava had asked when I surprised her with the deed last month. Her green eyes, so much like her mother's, my first wife who died when Ava was 12, were wide with disbelief. Absolutely sure, sweetheart. You're getting married, starting fresh. This is my wedding gift to you. What I didn't mention was that I was also starting fresh. My current wife, Simone, had been growing colder by the day, and I had my suspicions why. Late-night phone calls, she claimed, were charity work. Designer clothes appearing in her closet that I hadn't paid for. The way she looked right through me at dinner parties, like I was furniture. Simone Alvarez came from old Miami money, the kind that built this city before air conditioning made it livable. Her family had been bleeding cash for decades, keeping up appearances while their fortune evaporated. When we married 6 years ago, I thought I was getting a partner. Turns out, I was getting a parasite with perfect bone structure and a law degree she'd never used. The morning everything went to hell started like any other. I was in my home office reviewing blueprints when my phone rang. Mr. Carter? The voice was shaky, young. This is Mark. Something's wrong at the house. Ava's... They're here and they're saying, slow down, son. Who's there? Simone's family, her father, her uncle, some guy named Brent. They're telling Ava she has to leave. They're saying the house belongs to them now, that there was some mistake with the paperwork. My blood went cold. Raul Alvarez, Simone's father, was a 70-year-old shark who'd spent his life intimidating people smaller than him. If he was at Ava's house making threats, this wasn't a misunderstanding. I'm on my way. Don't let them inside and don't sign anything. I grabbed my keys and drove the 15 minutes to the beach house faster than I should have. The circular driveway was packed with cars. Raul's black Mercedes, a red BMW I didn't recognize, and Simone's white Porsche. My gut twisted. The front door was standing open. I could hear voices from inside, angry, overlapping, with Ava's higher pitch cutting through like a blade. This is my house. My father gave it to me legally. Your father had no right, came Raul's gravelly voice. This property was purchased with family money. Alvarez money. You're not an Alvarez, little girl. I stepped through the doorway and took in the scene. Ava stood in the center of the living room, tears streaming down her face with Mark's protective arm around her shoulders. Raul loomed over them both, his silver hair slicked back and his expensive suit doing nothing to hide the cruelty in his dark eyes. Simone stood off to the side, her arms crossed, not meeting anyone's gaze. Next to her was a man I recognized from photos. Brent Mallory, her business partner in some consulting firm that seemed to do a lot of consulting and very little actual work. He was younger than me, maybe 38, with the kind of artificial tan and perfect teeth that screamed insecurity. Well, I said, stepping into the room. Family meeting, how thoughtful of you, all to include me. Raul turned and his lip curled. Nicholas, perfect timing. We were just explaining to your daughter that this house needs to be returned to its rightful owners. Rightful owners? I kept my voice level, but inside I was calculating distances, exits, potential weapons. 20 years of marriage to his daughter had taught me that Raul Alvarez didn't make social calls. I bought this property with my money, built this house with my company, and gave it to my daughter with a legal deed transfer. Which part of that involves you? The part where you used marital assets. Brent spoke up, his voice smooth and practiced. Assets that legally belong to both you and Simone. She had every right to contest the transfer. I looked at my wife. Simone, you want to explain this? She finally met my eyes, and what I saw there wasn't guilt or shame. It was contempt, pure undiluted contempt. You gave away a $500,000 house without consulting me, Nick. What did you expect? I expected my wife to support my decision to help my daughter. Silly me. Your daughter, Raul spat. Not our family. Not Alvarez blood. That's when he made his mistake. He reached out and grabbed Ava's arm, his fingers digging into her skin hard enough to leave marks. You're going to pack your things and leave tonight. This house belongs to people who understand its value. Ava cried out in pain, and Mark stepped forward. Let go of her! Raul backhanded Mark across the face, sending him stumbling backward into the wall. And that's when I stopped being civilized. Get your hands off my daughter! My voice was quiet, but something in it made everyone freeze. Even Brent, who'd been smirking at Mark's humiliation, took a step back. Or what? Raul's grip on Ava tightened. You'll call your lawyers? Sue us? We have lawyers too, Nicholas. Better ones. I walked over to the wall panel and pressed a button. Instantly, every screen in the house, the living room TV, the kitchen display, the tablets built into the walls, lit up with security camera footage. Multiple angles of Raul grabbing Ava, of him punching Mark, of all of them standing in my daughter's house making threats. Actually, I said conversationally, I was thinking I'd call the police. Attack, battery, criminal trespass, intimidation. Should I go on? Raul's face went red. You think you're clever? I think I'm a father protecting his child from a bully who's about 30 years past his prime. He let go of Ava and came at me, his fist raised. I'd been waiting for it. I caught his wrist, used his momentum to spin him around, and slammed him face first against the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the ocean. The glass didn't break, but the sound of his nose hitting it was deeply satisfying. The next person who touches my daughter, I announced to the room, gets thrown off the balcony. And before you think I'm bluffing, remember that I designed this house. I know exactly how far it is to the rocks below. Simone was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Nick, you can't what? Defend my family? Protect my daughter from your psychotic relatives? I looked around the room. Here's what's going to happen. You're all going to leave now. And if any of you come back here without a court order, I'll have you arrested for maltreatment. Brent cleared his throat. The legal issues here are complex, Nick. Maybe we should all calm down and discuss this rationally. I turned my attention to him. Something about the way he said my name, too familiar, too comfortable, made my skin crawl. And you are? Brent Mallory. I'm Simone's business partner. Right. The business partner. I studied his face, noting the nervous sweat, the way his eyes kept darting to Simone. Tell me, Brent, how long have you been partnering with my wife? The question hung in the air like smoke. Simone went pale. I don't know what you're implying, Brent said, but his voice cracked slightly. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a direct question. How long have you been partnering with my wife? 3 years, he said quickly, and professionally. Professionally, I nodded slowly. And personally? Nick. Simone's voice was sharp with warning. Don't. Don't what? Don't ask questions about why my wife's business partner's in my daughter's house, backing up her father's intimidation tactics. Don't wonder why you're both so invested in a property that has nothing to do with either of you. I walked over to where Raul was still slumped against the window, holding his bleeding nose. Here's some free advice, old man. The next time you want to steal from my family, make sure you're not doing it on camera. I pressed another button, and the sound of their conversation from before I arrived began playing through the house speakers. Raul's voice filled the room. Your father had no right. You're not an Alvarez little girl. This house belongs to people who understand its value. Funny thing about security systems, I said conversationally, they record everything. Audio, video, timestamps. Very useful in court. Brent was backing toward the door. This is all a misunderstanding. We should go. Yes, I agreed. You should, all of you. And Simone? My wife looked at me with something that might have been fear. We need to talk, soon. After they left, Raul still bleeding, Brent practically running, Simone throwing one last venomous look over her shoulder. I sat down with Ava and Mark on the white leather couch I'd picked out specifically for this room. Dad, Ava said quietly, what was that really about? I looked at my daughter, her mother's eyes, her mother's stubborn chin, but with a strength that was all her own. She deserved the truth. I think your stepmother has been planning something for a while, and I think her business partner is more than just a business partner. Mark spoke up. The way they talked to each other, it was like they'd rehearsed it. Smart kid. Exactly. This wasn't spontaneous. They came here with a plan. What kind of plan? I thought about Simone's cold silences, her mysterious phone calls, the way she'd been slowly separating our finances over the past year, the way Brent had looked at her, possessive and familiar, the kind that involves taking everything I've worked for and leaving me with nothing. Ava's hand found mine. What are we going to do? I squeezed her fingers and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We're going to remind them that the house always wins, sweetheart. Always. That night, after I'd made sure Ava and Mark were safe and the security system was fully armed, I went home to confront my wife. But the house was empty. Simone's car was gone, and half her clothes were missing from our bedroom closet. On my pillow, I found a note. You should have minded your own business, Nick. Now you'll lose everything. I crumpled the paper and threw it across the room. Then I walked to my office, opened my laptop, and started making calls. If Simone wanted a war, she'd get one, but she was about to learn that I didn't just build houses for a living. Sometimes I tore them down. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years and drove to Joel Martinez's office. Joel had been my best friend since college, back when we were both young and stupid enough to think we could change the world. He'd gone into police work while I'd chosen architecture, but we'd stayed close through marriages, divorces, and everything in between. After 20 years on the Miami PD, Joel had opened his own private investigation firm. His office was in a strip mall between a bail bondsman and a check cashing place. Not glamorous, but Joel had always been more about results than appearances. You look like hell, he said when I walked in. Joel was shorter than me, stocky, with graying hair and the kind of face that made people want to confess their sins. What happened? I told him everything, the scene at Ava's house, Simone's disappearance, the note on my pillow. Joel listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. So, he said when I finished, you think your wife is cheating with this Brent guy? I think my wife is planning to take me for everything I'm worth, and Brent is helping her do it. Those aren't necessarily the same thing, aren't they? Joel leaned back in his chair. Nick, I've seen a lot of messy divorces. If Simone just wanted half your assets, she could file papers and be done with it. This thing with your daughter's house, the intimidation tactics, that's personal. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe she wants more than money. Maybe she wants to hurt you. The thought had occurred to me, but hearing it out loud made it real. Can you help me? Depends. What exactly do you want me to do? Find out what she's planning, who she's working with, what kind of evidence she might have against me. Joel nodded slowly. I can do surveillance, background checks, financial records, but Nick, if this gets ugly, you need to be prepared for what we might find. I'm prepared. Are you? Because in my experience, the truth is usually worse than whatever you're imagining. I thought about Simone's contemptuous stare, the way she'd stood by while her father grabbed my daughter. I doubt that. Joel started earning his fee immediately. Within 2 days, he'd confirmed that Simone and Brent were sharing more than business expenses. They'd been seen together at restaurants, hotels, and social events all over Miami. Always when I was supposedly out of town on business. Here's the interesting part, Joel said, spreading photos across his desk. They're not trying very hard to hide it. Look at this. The photos showed Simone and Brent at an upscale restaurant in South Beach, holding hands across the table, kissing over champagne. They looked like a couple celebrating an anniversary. When was this taken? Last Thursday, the night you were supposedly visiting that client in Tampa. I remembered that night. Simone had been unusually affectionate when I called to say goodnight, asking about my meetings, telling me she missed me, while she was sitting across from another man, planning God knows what. There's more, Joel said. He pulled out a thick folder. Financial records. Your wife has been very busy. The documents painted a picture that made my blood run cold. Over the past 18 months, Simone had been systematically moving money out of our joint accounts and into accounts controlled by her and Brent's consulting firm. Not enough to trigger automatic alerts, but enough to add up to serious money. How much? I asked. So far? About $200,000. But that's not the worst part. Joel showed me a series of contracts and agreements. Simone had been using our joint credit and my business reputation to secure loans and investments for projects that, as far as I could tell, didn't exist. She's been forging your signature, Joel explained, setting up deals in your name, then funneling the money through their consulting firm. If these deals go bad, I'm liable for everything. Every penny. And some of these contracts. Nick, we're talking about millions of dollars. I sat back in my chair, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. She's trying to ruin me. Looks that way. The question is why? Most people would just file for divorce and take half. This is vindictive. That evening, I drove to Ava's house to check on her and Mark. The security system showed no unauthorized visitors since the confrontation with Raul, but I wasn't taking any chances. Dad, you look terrible, Ava said when she opened the door. Have you been sleeping? Not much. I followed her into the kitchen where Mark was making dinner. The normalcy of it, the young couple cooking together in their beautiful home, made what Simone was trying to do seem even more obscene. Any word from Simone? Ava asked carefully. She's been busy. Joel's helping me figure out exactly how busy. I didn't want to burden Ava with the details, but she was smart enough to read between the lines. This is about more than the house, isn't it? Yeah, sweetheart, I think it is. Mark looked up from the stove. Is there anything we can do to help? Actually, there might be. I need you both to be extra careful for the next few weeks. Don't go anywhere alone, keep your phones charged, and if anyone from Simone's family contacts you, call me immediately. You think they'll come back? I think they're not done trying to get what they want. And what they want is this house and everything else I've worked for. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the photos of Simone and Brent, the forged contracts, the systematic way they'd been bleeding me dry. But it was more than the money that bothered me. It was the planning, the cold calculation of it all. How long had she been planning this? How long had she been lying to my face, sleeping in my bed, pretending to be my wife while she plotted my destruction? Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to my office. I pulled out the files Joel had given me and started going through them more carefully, looking for patterns, connections, anything that might give me an advantage. That's when I found it. Buried in the financial records was a series of payments to a law firm I didn't recognize. Large payments made monthly for the past year. I looked up the firm online, Brennan, Walsh & Associates, specializing in family law and asset protection, from me. I called Joel, not caring that it was nearly 4 in the morning. This better be good, he answered on the first ring. She's been planning this for over a year. Look at the payments to Brennan, Walsh & Associates. Hold on, I could hear Joel typing. Holy crap, Nick. These guys are sharks. They specialize in high net worth divorces where one party wants to hide assets from the other. So she's not just cheating on me. She's been preparing to take everything. Looks that way. But here's the thing. If we can prove she's been hiding assets and forging documents, we can turn this around on her. How? Fraud, forgery, conspiracy. These aren't just civil matters, Nick. They're criminal. If we play this right, Simone and her boyfriend could be looking at serious jail time. For the first time in days, I smiled. What do you need me to do? Nothing yet. Let me dig deeper, see what else I can find. But Nick, this is going to get ugly before it gets better. Good, I said. I'm tired of playing defense. The next afternoon, Joel called with an update that changed everything. I found their nest, he said. Simone and Brent have been living together in a condo in Coral Gables. Expensive place, paid for with money from their consulting firm. Our money. Your money. But here's the interesting part. They're not being careful anymore. I think they're planning to make their move soon. What kind of move? The kind where you wake up one morning and find out you're broke, divorced, and facing criminal charges for fraud you didn't commit. I felt a chill run down my spine. They're going to frame me? Think about it, Nick. All those forged contracts, all that missing money. Who's going to believe you didn't know about it? You're a successful businessman. You have access to all the accounts and your signatures on everything. But you said the signatures were forged. I said they looked forged to me. But I'm not a handwriting expert, and even if I was, Simone's been practicing. Some of these signatures are pretty damn good. I sat down heavily in my office chair. Outside my window, Miami sprawled in the afternoon sun, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere out there, my wife and her lover were putting the finishing touches on a plan that would destroy everything I'd built. Joel, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I want to know everything about Brent Mallory, where he came from, who he's worked for, what kind of man he really is, and I want to know what Simone has been telling him about me. You thinking about confronting them? I'm thinking about a lot of things. That evening, as I sat in my empty house, eating takeout Chinese food, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Ava's number. Dad, you need to get over here, now. What's wrong? Just come. And Dad, bring Joel if you can reach him. I called Joel on the way over, and we arrived at Ava's house at the same time. She met us at the door, her face pale and her hands shaking. They were here, she said. Simone and that Brent guy. They didn't try to come in, but they sat in the driveway for almost an hour, just watching. When? About 2 hours ago. I called the police, but by the time they got here, they were gone. Joel was already checking the security cameras. Got them, he said. Clear shots of both of them in Brent's BMW. I watched the footage of my wife and her lover sitting in my daughter's driveway, and something cold and hard settled in my chest. They're not done, I said quietly. Dad, I'm scared, Ava admitted. I put my arms around my daughter and held her close. Don't be scared, sweetheart. Be angry. Because they just made a very big mistake. What mistake? I looked at Joel, who nodded grimly. He understood. They threatened my family, I said. And now the gloves come off. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in 20 years of marriage. I hired a divorce attorney. Not just any divorce attorney. I hired Catherine Walsh from Brennan, Walsh & Associates, the same firm Simone had been paying for over a year. This is highly irregular, Mr. Carter, Catherine said when I explained the situation in her downtown Miami office. She was a sharp-faced woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the kind of carnivory intelligence that made me understand why Simone had chosen her firm. I imagine it is. But since my wife has been paying your firm to help her hide assets and forge my signature, I thought you might be interested in representing the sufferer instead of the criminal. Catherine's expression didn't change, but I saw her hands tighten slightly on her Mont Blanc pen. I'm not sure what you're implying, Mr. Carter. I slid Joel's folder across her desk. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Your client has been systematically defrauding me for over a year, and I have documentation to prove it. She spent 20 minutes reviewing the evidence, her face growing paler with each page. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Carter, if these documents are authentic, then someone at this firm has been involved in serious criminal activity. I can assure you that it wasn't authorized by our senior partners. I don't care about your firm's internal politics. I care about protecting my assets and my family. Can you help me or not? I can help you, but first I need to make some calls. If what you're showing me is true, then we need to involve law enforcement immediately. Already done. My investigator has been working with the Miami PD Financial Crimes Unit. But I want more than just criminal charges. I want to destroy them. Catherine smiled for the first time since I'd walked into her office. Mr. Carter, I think we're going to get along just fine. While Catherine worked on the legal side, Joel continued his surveillance. What he discovered made me realize that Simone and Brent had been even busier than I'd thought. They're not just stealing from you, Joel explained over coffee at a diner near his office. They've been running the same scam on at least 3 other wealthy men in Miami. What kind of scam? Simone gets close to married men with money, usually through charity events or social clubs. She gains their trust, sometimes starts affairs, sometimes just becomes a close friend. Then she and Brent use the information she gathers to forge documents and steal money. I felt sick. How many sufferers? That I can prove. 4, including you. But I think there are more. Jesus Christ, how long has this been going on? At least 5 years, maybe longer. I thought about our 6-year marriage, about how we'd met at a charity gala for children's cancer research, how she'd seemed so interested in my work, my business, my financial planning, how she'd slowly gained access to all my accounts and passwords. I was just another mark, I said quietly. Looks that way, but Nick, you're also the mark who figured it out, and you're the one with the resources to fight back. That afternoon, Catherine called with news that changed everything. The FBI is interested in your case, she said. Apparently, your wife and Mr. Mallory have been on their radar for a while. They'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning. The FBI? Financial Crimes Task Force. This kind of systematic fraud, crossing state lines, involving multiple sufferers, it's their jurisdiction now. The meeting with FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen was surreal. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with short black hair and the kind of intense focus that made me understand why criminals confess to her. Mr. Carter, we've been investigating what we call the Alvarez-Mallory network for 18 months. She explained in a sterile conference room at the federal building. Your wife and her partner have been running sophisticated financial fraud schemes across 3 states. How sophisticated? Very. They target wealthy individuals, usually through social connections. One of them, usually Simone, gets close to the target, gains their trust, learns about their finances. Then they systematically drain accounts, forge documents, and disappear before the sufferer realizes what's happened. But they didn't disappear from me. No, they didn't. We think that's because you represent their biggest score yet. Your net worth, your business connections, your reputation. They saw an opportunity to steal not just your money, but your entire life. Agent Chen showed me photographs of other sufferers, men who looked disturbingly similar to me. Successful, middle-aged, recently divorced or widowed. Men who'd been looking for companionship and found hunters instead. What happened to them? Bankruptcy, mostly. One attempted self-destruction, another lost his business and his house. She looked at me intently. You're the first one who figured it out before they finished the job. What do you need from me? Cooperation. We want to build a case that will put them away for a long time, but we need evidence. Recordings, documents, testimony. Whatever you need. That evening, I called Ava to update her on the situation. She listened quietly as I explained about the FBI, the other sufferers, the scope of what Simone and Brent had been doing. Dad, she said when I finished, I'm proud of you. Proud of me? For what? For fighting back. A lot of men would have just given up. Let them take everything rather than go through this. I couldn't do that to you, sweetheart. This house, your future, I won't let them steal it. It's not about the house, Dad. It's about standing up to bullies. Mom would have been proud, too. The mention of my first wife, Ava's mother, hit me harder than I'd expected. Sarah had been everything Simone wasn't. Honest, loyal, genuinely loving. If she were still alive, none of this would have happened. I miss her, I admitted. Me too. But Dad, I think she'd want you to be happy. And you can't be happy if you let these people destroy everything you've worked for. The next few days blurred together in a haze of meetings with lawyers, FBI agents, and financial investigators. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. Simone and Brent hadn't just stolen money. They'd been systematically destroying the lives of good people for years. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd gotten greedy. The problem with long-term cons, Agent Chen explained, is that eventually the criminals start to believe their own lies. They think they're smarter than everyone else, that they can't be caught. And that's what happened here? That's what happened here. Instead of taking a reasonable amount and disappearing, they decide to go for everything. Your business, your reputation, your family's future. They wanted to leave you with nothing. Well, I said grimly, let's see how they like having nothing themselves. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. With the FBI's help, I would pretend to be unaware of Simone's activities. I would act like a confused, betrayed husband who just wanted his wife back. And when she and Brent moved to complete their plan, we'd be waiting. The key, Agent Chen explained, is making them feel safe, confident. We want them to incriminate themselves so thoroughly that no jury in the world would acquit them. How long will that take? Not long. Based on their pattern with other sufferers, they're probably planning to make their final move within the next 2 weeks. What kind of final move? Complete financial ruin, followed by criminal charges against you for the fraud they committed. They've done it before. Frame the sufferer for the crimes, then disappear while the sufferer fights the charges. I thought about the other men in those FBI photographs. Men who'd lost everything to Simone's lies. Not this time, I said. No, Agent Chen agreed. Not this time. That night, I sat in my empty house and called Simone's cell phone. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice cautious. Nick? Simone, we need to talk. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. What do you mean? The lawyers, the FBI, I just want my wife back. Can we meet somewhere, neutral ground? There was a long pause, then, I don't think that's a good idea. Please, I know I made mistakes. Maybe we can work this out. Another pause. Where? Wherever you want. I miss you, Simone. I miss us. I'll call you back, she said and hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Tomorrow night, Simone said. The Fontainebleau, lobby bar, 8 o'clock. I'll be there. Nick, come alone. After she hung up, I called Agent Chen. She took the bait. I said, good. We'll have the place wired and under surveillance. Just remember, act desperate. Act willing to do anything to get her back. Make her think she's won. What if she doesn't incriminate herself? She will, Agent Chen said confidently. They always do. Success makes people arrogant, and arrogant people make mistakes. I spent the next day preparing for the performance of my life. Everything depended on convincing Simone that I was broken, defeated, ready to give her whatever she wanted. It shouldn't have been hard to act heartbroken. Despite everything she'd done, part of me still remembered the woman I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago. Or at least the woman I'd thought I'd fallen in love with. But as I got dressed for our meeting, I realized that the heartbreak was gone. In its place was something colder, harder, more focused. Simone had made the mistake of threatening my daughter, and now she was going to pay for it. The Fontainebleau's lobby bar was exactly the kind of place Simone would choose for a meeting. Expensive, public, full of beautiful people who were too absorbed in their own dramas to pay attention to anyone else's. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a corner table where Agent Chen's surveillance team would have clear sightlines. Simone walked in at exactly 8 o'clock, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. She was wearing a black dress that hugged every curve, her dark hair swept up to show off the diamond earrings I'd given her for our first anniversary. She looked like a woman who owned the world. She also looked like a stranger. Nick, she said, sliding into the seat across from me, you look terrible. I haven't been sleeping well. I imagine not. She ordered a martini from the hovering waitress, then turned her attention back to me. So, you wanted to talk. I want to understand what happened to us. Simone's laugh was like broken glass. What happened to us? Really, Nick? You gave away $500,000 without consulting me. You chose your daughter over your wife. What did you think would happen? I thought my wife would support my decision to help my child. Your child, not our child. Never our child. Her voice was bitter. Do you have any idea what it's like, being married to a man who makes it clear every day that his dead wife and her daughter will always come first? The words hit like a physical blow. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you looked at me the way you look at Ava? When was the last time you put my needs before hers? I started to answer, then stopped. Because despite everything she'd done, despite the fraud and the lies and the betrayal, there was a grain of truth in what she was saying. I loved you, I said quietly. You loved the idea of me. The beautiful wife who would make you look successful, who would host your dinner parties and smile at your business partners and never ever ask for anything that mattered. What did you want from me, Simone? What could I have given you that would have been enough? She leaned forward, her green eyes glittering in the bar's dim lighting. Everything, Nick. I wanted everything. Your business, your money, your reputation, your future. I wanted to take it all and watch you realize that you never really had me at all. The words hung between us like a confession. I could practically feel Agent Chen and her team leaning forward in their surveillance van. Why? I asked. Because you deserved it. Because men like you think you can buy women like me. Think you can own us with your houses and your jewelry and your condescending generosity because you never saw me as anything more than a beautiful accessory. And Brent, what does he see you as? Simone's smile was sharp enough to cut. A partner, an equal, someone who understands that the world is divided into hunters and prey, and we're not to prey. What about the other men, the ones you and Brent have been stealing from? For the first time, she looked genuinely surprised. What other men? Come on, Simone. The FBI knows about all of them. The systematic fraud, the forged documents, the pattern of targeting wealthy, lonely men. Did you really think you could keep running the same scam forever? Her face went pale, then flushed red with anger. You fool! You've been investigating me. I've been protecting myself and my daughter. Your precious daughter! Simone's voice was venomous. Do you want to know what we had planned for her after we finished with you? Tell me. That house she loves so much? We were going to take it back, piece by piece. The furniture, the artwork, even the fixtures. And then we were going to sell it to developers who would tear it down and build condos. I felt my hands clench into fists under the table. You're sick. I'm practical. Your daughter's a spoiled little princess who's never worked for anything in her life. It would have been good for her to learn what the real world is like. The real world according to who? You? A woman who spent the last 5 years stealing from people who trusted her? Simone stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the marble floor. This conversation is over. Sit down, Simone. Go to hell, Nick. She turned to leave, but I caught her wrist. I said sit down. For a moment, we stared at each other across the small table. Then she saw her eyes never leaving my face. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. You're going to tell me exactly what you and Brent have been planning. You're going to give me the passwords to every account you've opened in my name. And you're going to transfer back every penny you've stolen. Or what? Or I'll make sure you spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Simone laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you've outsmarted us? Haven't I? Nick, darling, you have no idea what you're up against. Brent and I have been planning this for 3 years. We have evidence that will destroy you. Financial records, forged documents, even recordings of conversations where you supposedly authorized illegal transactions. Recordings of my voice? Very good recordings. Technology is amazing these days. I felt a chill run down my spine. You can't fake that kind of evidence. Can't we? We've been doing it for years, Nick. By the time we're done with you, you'll be facing criminal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Your business will be ruined, your reputation destroyed, and your daughter will lose everything anyway. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. The only difference is whether you cooperate with us now or whether we destroy you completely. What do you want? Sign over your business to Brent, transfer all your remaining assets to accounts we control, and disappear. Leave Miami, leave Florida, leave the country if you want. Just go away and let us clean up the mess you've made. And if I don't, then tomorrow morning the FBI will receive an anonymous tip about your criminal activities, along with all the evidence we've manufactured to support it. I stared at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and realized that she was completely serious. She and Brent had been planning not just to steal from me, but to frame me for their crimes. You're insane, I said. I'm thorough. There's a difference. Simone stood up again, smoothing down her dress. You have 24 hours to decide, Nick. Cooperate or lose everything. She walked away without looking back, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown timer. I sat alone at the table for another 10 minutes, nursing my untouched scotch and thinking about everything she'd said. Then I walked outside to where Agent Chen was waiting in an unmarked sedan. Did you get all that? I asked, sliding into the passenger seat. Every word. She just confessed to conspiracy, fraud, and extortion. Agent Chen was smiling. We've got them. What about the evidence she mentioned, the fake recordings? We'll deal with that. The important thing is that she just admitted to manufacturing evidence and framing you for crimes you didn't commit. That's a federal offense. So what happens now? Now we arrest them, both of them, tonight, before they have a chance to destroy evidence or flee the country. I thought about Simone's confident smile, her absolute certainty that she held all the cards. She's going to be very surprised. They always are, Agent Chen said. Criminals like your wife think they're the smartest people in the room. They never expect their sufferers to fight back. The arrests happened at 3 a.m. Agent Chen called to give me the details. Simone and Brent had been taken into custody at their Coral Gables condo, along with computers, financial records, and enough evidence to support dozens of federal charges. They tried to run, Agent Chen told me, had bags packed, plane tickets to the Cayman Islands. If we'd waited another day, they would have been gone. What happens next? Arraignment, probably early next week. With the evidence we have, I doubt they'll get bail. And Nick? We found the other sufferers, all of them. This case is going to make national news. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen, watching the sun rise over Biscayne Bay. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. My phone rang again. Ava. Dad, I saw the news. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Better than fine. Is it really over? I thought about Simone's face when Agent Chen had played back the recording of our conversation, about the moment when she'd realized that her perfect plan had fallen apart. Yeah, I said. It's really over. Good. Because Mark and I have something to tell you. What's that? We moved up the wedding. We want to get married next month here at the house, and we want you to walk me down the aisle. I felt tears prick at my eyes. I'd be honored. Dad? Yeah? I love you, and I'm proud of you for fighting for us. After we hung up, I walked out onto my balcony and looked out at the ocean. Somewhere out there, Simone was sitting in a federal holding cell, probably still trying to figure out how her perfect plan had gone so wrong. The answer was simple. She'd underestimated the man she'd tried to destroy. She'd seen me as just another mark, another sufferer to be used and discarded. But I wasn't a sufferer. I was a father protecting his daughter, a man defending his life's work, a builder who knew how to tear things down when necessary. And most importantly, I was someone who understood that in the end, the house always wins. Always. 3 weeks later, I was reviewing blueprints for a new project when Catherine Walsh called with news that made my blood run cold. They made bail, she said without preamble. What? How is that possible? Brent's family put up their house as collateral, and Simone's father liquidated some investments. $2 million each. I sat down heavily in my office chair. I thought you said they were flight risks. They are, but they got a judge who was more concerned with constitutional rights than public safety. They're both wearing ankle monitors and surrendered their passports, but Nick, they're free until trial. When is the trial? 6 months, maybe longer. Federal cases move slowly. I hung up and immediately called Joel. I heard, he said before I could speak. Chen called me 20 minutes ago. Are Ava and Mark safe? I've got surveillance on the house and I alerted the security company to increase patrols. But Nick, you need to be careful too. People like Simone don't handle humiliation well. That evening, I drove to Ava's house to check on her personally. She and Mark were in the kitchen making dinner, and the normalcy of the scene, the young couple cooking together, talking about their wedding plans, made me realize how much I had to lose. Dad, you look worried, Ava said, giving me a hug. Just being cautious. Simone and Brent are out on bail. Mark looked up from the stove. Should we be concerned? Probably not. They're being monitored, and they know that any violation of their bail conditions means they go straight back to jail. But I want you both to be extra careful for the next few weeks. What about you? Ava asked. Are you being careful? I thought about the tool I'd started carrying, the new security system I'd installed at my house, the way I checked my rear view mirror constantly when driving. I'm taking precautions. 2 days later, those precautions proved necessary. I was leaving my office around 7 p.m. when I noticed a familiar red BMW following me. Brent's car. I took a circuitous route home, making several unnecessary turns, but the BMW stayed with me. At a red light, my phone rang. Hello, Nick. Simone's voice was calm, controlled. Beautiful evening, isn't it? What do you want, Simone? To talk. One last time. We have nothing to talk about. I think we do. You see, Nick, you may have won the battle, but the war isn't over. The light turned green and I drove through the intersection. The BMW followed. You're violating your bail conditions, I said. Maltreatment. Stalking. You want to go back to jail? What I want is for you to understand something very important. You may have destroyed my life, but I can still destroy yours. How? You're facing 20 years in federal prison. Your reputation is ruined. Your assets are frozen. What exactly do you think you can do to me? Simone's laugh was cold. Oh, Nick, you really don't understand, do you? This was never just about money. Then what was it about? Revenge. Pure, simple revenge. And just because I'm going to prison doesn't mean I can't have it. The line went dead. I immediately called Agent Chen, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I called Joel. They're following me, I said. Simone called, made some kind of threat. Where are you now? Heading home on US 1. Red BMW, license plate. I squinted in my rearview mirror. I can't make it out. Don't go home. Drive to the nearest police station. I'll meet you there. But as I took the next exit, heading toward the Miami Beach police station, the BMW suddenly accelerated and cut me off, forcing me to swerve into a parking lot behind a strip mall. Brent got out of the driver's side, and Simone emerged from the passenger seat. Both of them looked different than they had 3 weeks ago. Thinner, harder, with the desperate edge of people who had nothing left to lose. I stayed in my car and called 911. 911, what's your emergency? This is Nick Carter. I'm being maltreated by 2 people who are out on federal bail. I'm in the parking lot behind the shops on... Brent smashed my driver's side window with a tire iron. "Get out of the car, Nick," he said, his voice shaking with rage, or fear, or both. I dropped the phone and slowly opened the door. Through the broken connection, I could hear the 911 operator asking for my location. "What do you want?" I asked, getting out of the car. "We want you to understand what you've cost us," Simone said. She was holding something in her right hand, a small revolver that looked like it had been expensive once. "Simone, put the tool down. This isn't going to solve anything, isn't it? You destroyed our lives, Nick. Our business, our reputation, our future, all because you couldn't stand the thought of your precious daughter losing her pretty house. You destroyed your own lives when you decided to become criminals." Brent stepped closer, still holding the tire iron. "You self-righteous fool. You think you're so much better than us?" "I think I'm honest. There's a difference." "Honest?" Simone's voice rose to a near shriek. "You married me for my connections, used my family's name to advance your business, and then threw me away when I became inconvenient. I married you because I thought I loved you. I was wrong." The words hung in the air between us. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Simone raised the tool. "You're going to transfer every asset you have left to an account I control," she said. "Your business, your house, your retirement accounts, everything. And if I don't, then I'm going to kill you, drive to your daughter's house, and kill her too." I felt something cold and deadly settle in my chest. "You would hurt Ava? I would destroy her, just like you destroyed me." That's when I stopped being afraid and started being angry. "You know what, Simone? You're right, I did destroy you. And you know what else? I enjoyed every minute of it." Her eyes widened with surprise. "I enjoyed watching your face when Agent Chen played that recording. I enjoyed seeing you in handcuffs. And I'm going to enjoy watching you spend the next 20 years in a federal penitentiary, thinking about how you could have just taken half my assets in a normal divorce and been done with it." "Shut up," Brent said, raising the tire iron. "But you got greedy, didn't you? You couldn't just steal from me. You had to humiliate me. You had to involve my daughter. You had to make it personal." "I said shut up." Brent swung the tire iron at my head. I ducked and tackled him around the waist, driving him backward into the side of his BMW. The tire iron clattered across the asphalt. "Nick, stop!" Simone screamed. I spun around to face her and found myself looking down the barrel of her tool. "It's over, Simone," I said quietly. "Even if you kill me, it's over. The FBI has all the evidence. You're going to prison no matter what happens here. Maybe. But at least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing you're dead." "And what about Brent? You think he's going to visit you in prison? You think he's going to wait 20 years for you to get out?" I saw doubt flicker in her eyes. "Look at him, Simone. Really look at him." She glanced at Brent, who was leaning against his car, holding his ribs where I'd tackled him. His face was pale and sweating, and he was staring at the tool in her hands like it was a poisonous snake. "He's already planning to run," I said. "The minute you pull that trigger, he's going to disappear and leave you to face the consequences alone." "That's not true," Brent said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? Tell her, Brent. Tell her how you're going to stand by her when she's facing homicide charges on top of everything else." Brent looked at Simone, then at me, then back at Simone. "Baby, maybe we should think about this." "Think about what?" Simone's voice was sharp with betrayal. "Think about running away and leaving me behind? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying maybe there's another way." "There is no other way," Simone screamed. "Don't you understand? We're finished. Our lives are over. The only thing left is making sure he pays for what he did to us." In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. The 911 call had gone through. "The police are coming, Simone," I said. "If you're going to shoot me, you better do it now." She stared at me for a long moment, the tool wavering in her hands. Then she looked at Brent again, and I saw the exact moment when she realized that I was right, that he was already planning to abandon her. "You fool," she whispered, but she wasn't talking to me anymore. She turned the tool on Brent. "Simone, no," he screamed, throwing his hands up. But she didn't pull the trigger. Instead, she started to cry, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her chest. "I loved you," she said to Brent. "I gave up everything for you, and you were going to leave me." The police cars arrived with a screech of tires and a blaze of flashing lights. Officers poured out of the vehicles, tools drawn, shouting commands. "Drop the weapon! Drop it now!" Simone looked around at the circle of police officers, at Brent, cowering against his car, at me standing 10 feet away with blood on my shirt from the broken window. Then she dropped the tool and sank to her knees. "It's over," she said quietly. "It's finally over." As they handcuffed Simone and Brent and led them to separate police cars, Agent Chen arrived on the scene. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "Just some cuts from the broken glass. Nothing serious." This was incredibly stupid of them. Threatening a federal witness, violating bail conditions, attack with a deadly weapon, they just added another 10 years to their sentences. I watched as the police cars drove away, carrying Simone and Brent back to jail where they would stay until trial. "Agent Chen," I said, "I want to make sure they never get bail again. After tonight, that's guaranteed. They'll be in federal custody until their trial, and after they're convicted, they'll be in federal prison for a very long time." I drove home slowly, thinking about everything that had happened. 6 months ago, I'd been a successful architect with a beautiful wife and a bright future. Tonight, I was a man who'd been threatened at gunpoint by the woman he'd once loved. But I was also a man who'd protected his daughter, saved his business, and ensured that 2 dangerous criminals would face justice. When I got home, I called Ava to let her know what had happened. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. "I'm fine, sweetheart, and you don't have to worry about Simone and Brent anymore. They're going back to prison, and this time they're staying there." "Good, because I have some news that might cheer you up." "What's that?" "Mark and I found a wedding planner. The ceremony's going to be on the beach behind the house, just like Mom would have wanted." I smiled for the first time in days. She would have loved that. "Dad, yeah, I'm proud of you for everything, for protecting us, for fighting back, for not letting them win." After we hung up, I poured myself a scotch and walked out onto my balcony. The ocean stretched out before me, dark and endless, and somewhere out there was a future that belonged to me and my daughter. Simone had been wrong about one thing. This hadn't been about money or revenge or even justice. It had been about family, about protecting the people you love from those who would hurt them. And in the end, that was a battle I would always win. The trial began on a rainy Tuesday morning in October. Federal courtroom, downtown Miami, packed with reporters and spectators who'd been following the case in the media. The Alvarez-Mallory fraud ring, as the newspapers had dubbed it, had become a sensation, a story of greed, betrayal, and justice that captured the public imagination. I sat in the front row behind the prosecution table, watching as Simone and Brent were led into the courtroom in shackles. They looked different than they had 6 months ago. Thinner, paler, with the hollow-eyed look of people who'd spent too much time in federal custody. Simone glanced back at me once, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I'd thought I'd married. Then her expression hardened, and she turned away. The prosecution's case was devastating. Agent Chen testified about the investigation, the pattern of fraud, the systematic way Simone and Brent had targeted their sufferers. Catherine Walsh presented the financial evidence, the forged documents, the stolen money, the elaborate web of fake companies and hidden accounts. But the most damaging testimony came from the other sufferers. James Morrison, a widowed real estate developer from Tampa, described how Simone had seduced him at a charity gala, gained his trust over months of carefully orchestrated encounters, then systematically drained his accounts, while Brent forged documents in his name. Robert Chen, a divorced tech entrepreneur from Orlando, told a similar story. The beautiful woman who'd seemed so interested in his work, the business partner who'd offered such lucrative investment opportunities, the gradual realization that everything he'd worked for was disappearing. Michael Torres, a recently widowed doctor from Jacksonville, broke down on the witness stand as he described losing not just his money, but his medical practice, his house, and his children's college funds to Simone and Brent's schemes. "They didn't just steal my money," he said, tears streaming down his face. "They stole my life, my future, everything I'd worked for, everything I'd planned to leave my children." The defense tried to paint Simone as a sufferer herself, a woman trapped in an abusive relationship with a controlling criminal mastermind. But the prosecution had recordings of Simone planning the crimes, directing Brent's actions, celebrating their sufferer's downfall. When I took the witness stand, the defense attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Rebecca Stone, tried to make me look like a vindictive ex-husband seeking revenge. "Isn't it true, Mr. Carter, that you hired a private investigator to spy on your wife?" "I hired an investigator to find out why money was disappearing from my accounts. And isn't it true that you were angry about your wife's relationship with Mr. Mallory? I was angry that my wife was stealing from me and planning to frame me for crimes I didn't commit. But you've admitted that your marriage was troubled, that you prioritized your daughter over your wife. I looked at Simone, sitting at the defense table with her hands folded, staring straight ahead. I prioritized honesty over lies, I said. Apparently that was a problem for your client. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdicts in a clear, steady voice. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant, Simone Alvarez, guilty. On the charge of wire fraud, we find the defendant, Simone Alvarez, guilty. On the charge of money laundering, we find the defendant, Simone Alvarez, guilty. The list went on. 18 counts for Simone, 16 for Brent. Guilty on every single charge. When the judge read the sentences 3 weeks later, Simone got 22 years in federal prison. Brent got 18. Both would be eligible for parole in 12 years, assuming good behavior. The court finds that these defendants engaged in a systematic, premeditated scheme to defraud multiple sufferers over a period of several years, Judge Martinez said. Their crimes were not crimes of passion or desperation, but calculated acts of greed that destroyed the lives of innocent people. He looked directly at Simone. Ms. Alvarez, you used your intelligence, your beauty, and your social connections to prey on vulnerable men who trusted you. You showed no remorse for your actions and no concern for your sufferers. The court believes that a substantial period of incarceration is necessary to protect the public from your criminal conduct. As they led Simone away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. Her lips moved, and I could just make out the words, "I hate you." I smiled and mouthed back, "I know." Outside the courthouse, Agent Chen found me on the steps. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Like justice," I said. "Finally." "The restitution hearing is next month. You should get back most of what they stole, plus interest." "What about the other sufferers?" "Same thing. It won't undo the damage they caused, but at least they'll get their money back." I thought about Michael Torres, the doctor who'd lost his children's college funds, about James Morrison, who'd had to sell his house to pay debts he hadn't incurred, about Robert Chen, who'd lost his business to Simone's lies. "It's a start," I said. That evening, I drove to Ava's house, her house, legally and permanently now, for dinner. She and Mark were hosting a small celebration, just family and close friends. "Dad," Ava hugged me tightly as I walked through the front door. "How do you feel?" "Relieved, vindicated, ready to move on." "Good, because we have something to show you." She led me out to the back deck where Mark was setting up a projector and screen. "What's this?" "Wedding photos." We finally got them back from the photographer. For the next hour, we sat on the deck watching images from Ava's wedding 3 months ago. The ceremony on the beach, with the ocean as a backdrop. Ava in her mother's wedding dress, radiant with happiness. Me walking her down the aisle, trying not to cry. The reception in the house's great room, filled with friends and family and laughter. Ava and Mark's first dance as husband and wife, the toast I'd given, talking about new beginnings and the importance of building your life on a foundation of truth. "Look at this one," Ava said, pointing to a photo of the three of us on the beach after the ceremony. "We look like a real family." "We are a real family," I said. "I know, but for a while there, I wasn't sure we were going to make it." I thought about everything we'd been through. The threats, the fear, the months of uncertainty while we waited for justice. "We made it," I said. "That's what matters." Later that night, I sat alone on my own balcony, looking out at the lights of Miami Beach. My phone rang, Joel calling to check on me. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Good. Better than good, actually." "Any regrets?" I thought about the question seriously. Did I regret marrying Simone? Did I regret the 6 years I'd spent with a woman who'd been planning to destroy me almost from the beginning? "No," I said finally. "No regrets." Really, if I hadn't married Simone, I never would have learned how strong I really am. I never would have learned that I'd do anything to protect my family, and I never would have learned that sometimes the good guys actually win. The good guys don't always win, Nick. "No," I agreed. "But this time they did. This time, the house won." 6 months later, I was in my office reviewing plans for a new project when my assistant buzzed me. "Mr. Carter, there's a woman here to see you." Says her name is Linda Morrison. I recognized the name, James Morrison's daughter. Her father had been one of Simone's sufferers, the real estate developer from Tampa. Send her in. Linda Morrison was a woman in her 30s with her father's kind eyes and a determined set to her jaw. She shook my hand firmly and sat down across from my desk. Mr. Carter, I wanted to thank you. For what? For fighting back. For not letting them get away with it. She paused, gathering her thoughts. My father, after what happened to him, he gave up. He was so ashamed, so broken by what they'd done. He died 6 months ago, heart attack, but I think it was really from a broken heart. I'm sorry for your loss. He never got to see them convicted, never got to see justice done, but I did thanks to you. She leaned forward. The prosecutor told me that if you hadn't figured out their scheme, hadn't fought back the way you did, they might have gotten away with everything. I just protected my family. You protected all of us, all the sufferers, all the people they might have hurt in the future. She stood up. I just wanted you to know that my father would have been grateful. We all are. After she left, I sat in my office thinking about her words. About James Morrison, who died before he could see his tormentors brought to justice. About Michael Torres, who was slowly rebuilding his medical practice. About Robert Chen, who'd started a new company and was back on his feet. About Ava and Mark, who were talking about starting a family in the house I'd built for them. About Simone sitting in a federal prison cell in North Carolina, serving the first year of a 22-year sentence. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Nick Carter. This is Correctional Officer Williams at FCI Danbury. I have an inmate here who'd like to speak with you. My blood went cold. Simone? Yes, sir. She's asked to make a phone call to you. Are you willing to accept it? I thought about hanging up. I thought about telling the officer that I never wanted to hear from Simone Alvarez again, that she was part of a past I'd left behind. Instead, I said, put her through. There was a pause, some clicking sounds, and then Simone's voice came on the line. Hello, Nick. She sounded different, older, tired, with none of the confidence that had once made her so attractive. What do you want, Simone? To apologize. The words hung between us. I waited. I know you probably don't believe me, she continued. I know you think I'm just trying to manipulate you one more time. But Nick, I'm sorry for everything, for what I did to you, to your daughter, to all those other people. Why are you telling me this? Because I have a lot of time to think in here. About the choices I made, the people I hurt. About the woman I used to be before I became this. Who were you before? A long pause. I don't remember anymore. That's the worst part. I don't remember who I was before I became someone who could do those things. I found myself thinking about the woman I'd met at that charity gala 6 years ago. The woman who'd seemed so interested in my work, so passionate about helping children with cancer. Had any of that been real? Was any of it true, I asked? Any of what you told me about yourself, about what you wanted? Some of it, in the beginning. Her voice was barely a whisper. I did love you, Nick, for a while. But then Brent came along, and he showed me how much money we could make, and I chose greed over love. What about the other men? The other sufferers? I told myself they deserved it. Rich men who thought they could buy women like me. I convinced myself I was evening the score somehow. She paused. But that doctor, the one who lost his children's college funds, when he testified at the trial, when I saw what we'd done to him, what? I realized I'd become a monster. I didn't know what to say to that. Nick, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I can never undo what I did. But I want you to know that seeing you fight back, seeing you protect your daughter, and stand up for what was right, it reminded me that there are still good people in the world. Simone, I have to go. They only give us a few minutes for these calls. But Nick, take care of yourself. And take care of Ava. She's lucky to have a father who loves her enough to fight for her. The line went dead. I sat in my office for a long time after that, thinking about redemption and forgiveness and the choices that define us. Then I picked up my phone and called Ava. Hey, Dad, she answered on the first ring. What's up? Nothing special. I just wanted to hear your voice. Are you okay? Yeah, sweetheart, I'm perfect. Good. Because Mark and I have some news. What kind of news? The kind where you're going to be a grandfather. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Really? Really? We just found out this morning. Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you both. Thanks, Dad. And Dad? Yeah? We want to name the baby Sarah, after Mom, if it's a girl. She would have loved that. After we hung up, I walked out onto my balcony and looked out at the ocean. Somewhere out there was a future I was just beginning to imagine. A future with grandchildren and new projects and the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived. Behind me was a past that had tried to destroy me and failed. And here, in this moment, was the present. Imperfect but honest, complicated but true. I raised my glass of scotch to the setting sun and smiled. The house always wins, I said quietly. And this time I was the house.